All praises to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to everyone joining me on this program. This is the Fountain of Israel's Bible Studies program, and as always, it's an honor for me to stand before you on the Lord's holy Sabbath day. Now, before we get started, let me go ahead and encourage you to like, share, subscribe, and also to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend. And if you feel so inclined, please check the description box down below for the donation links, which are both PayPal or CashApp. PayPal or CashApp. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into our lesson. And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, it is that time of year, it's in February, where we do Black history from the Bible, or biblical Black history. And this particular lesson could be galvanizing, it can be, to some people, it may be incendiary. There's some people out there that actually didn't like this lesson. There's some people who think we're just spouting out, nonsense. Even though we can present the evidence and we use logic to support our argument, and biblical evidence as well as archaeological and historical evidence to support our argument, people still don't like it. In fact, they think that it's promoting, separatism and segregation and things like that. And I say that, a lot of times, the truth sounds like hate to people who hate the truth. You heard me say it in my other teachings of the very same lesson. And that happens. I have no ill will towards anyone. I have no malice, but I'm not going to bite my tongue when it comes to delivering the truth to you. And that's all I endeavor to do. That's my whole goal with this particular lesson. I just want to teach the truth the way it is written, the way it's presented, the way I see it, the way it is interpreted. And again, I'm going to use some historical resources. I'll use some graphs on the screen. I'll show you guys. This lesson is very, very visual. Now, this time I will not be using an extensive amount of clips because I don't want to have any copyright infringement. But what I may do is do like a companion video where there are some clips just to see if I'll have any copyright violations. If not, you'll see it. And you may be able to check it out after this lesson is over. But again, this lesson is a bit visual. This lesson is a bit longer than the lessons that I normally do. I try to keep my, if you've been following a ministry, I try to keep my lessons to about an hour. I know it's different from other camps. There is no time limit. It can be hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, things like that. I try to keep mine at about an hour. That's just my unique selling position. That's just my unique way of doing it. I can definitely teach for a couple of hours. It's not a problem. But I still don't come up short on scriptures. If you guys do your scripture count, we get in a lot of scriptures. We can pack in a lot of scriptures in that hour. So this particular lesson, Black history from the Bible, biblical Black history, however you prefer to say it. It's visual, so you want to look at the screen, you want to listen, you want to follow along. I'm going to be sharing a lot of information, a lot of commentary, because things need to be explained. And the reason why this lesson is extremely and vitally important, because this is a 4-part series, but the reason why this entire lesson, all 4 parts, is extremely important is because, one, it is true. So you're going to run into people who say, well, what does it matter? Or who cares? And that kind of thing. Well, the truth matters. And if it didn't matter, then the enemies at large would not have taken it upon themselves to obfuscate the truth. You wouldn't have to exercise any guile in presenting the truth back to the masses. And what they do, they deceived many of us. We have definitely inherited lies. We inherited a lot of lies. And so what I want to do is I want to put this puzzle piece back together that has been twisted, warped, and distorted. This history that's been thrown away from us, especially when you're talking about Black history, particularly here in the West. With us, most of the time, Black history just starts with the slave ships. But we're going to go beyond that. We're going to go way back to another ship. Now, this series, the biblical Black history from the Bible, so on and so forth, are in 4 parts. The first one is the color and the curses. That's the lesson that you're watching right now. The color and the curses. Then you're going to look at, we also have the marriage, divorce, and remarriage of Israel. You have the kings and priests. And finally, we have the adoption, the redemption and adoption of Israel, the restoration. Now, as I was saying before, the reason why it is so critically important is because if you cannot identify who Israel is, then when it comes to prophecy, you're going to get it wrong. If you attribute certain prophecies to the wrong people, then by default, you have it wrong. Would you not agree with that? That's why it's important. That's why who Israel is important, because the prophecy pertains to Israel. When we're not talking about the Messiah, we're talking about Israel, right? The people Israel. So we have got to, you have got to get this right, because so much of the Bible is prophecy and so much of it centers around what is going to happen to Israel. So if you do not have the people right, you cannot get the prophecy right. It is impossible. And for those who say, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Okay, well, then contribute all of the prophecies to Eskimos. Okay? It doesn't fit now, does it? Contribute all of the prophecies to the Japanese. Contribute it all to Australia. Why you at it? You see how it because it does matter. It actually does matter. For those who think, oh, you're just trying to, come be supreme. This supremacy, this supremacy doctrine, right? Having this inferiority complex. Oh, you're just trying to confiscate someone else's identity to feel important. No. Just chasing after the truth. I'm sorry that the results does not come out in your favor if you don't like that. You see, they always thought, they want to say that a teaching like this is about hate and, you don't like other people and we have a problem with people of other nations and things like that. The problem is, when it comes to the Christian faith, people of my color, melanated people, have already been serving and worshiping a non-melanated deity. So how could it be that we're the ones with the hate? How does that even make sense? That for centuries we've been serving blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. Now again, I have no problem with Jesus. I know his name is actually Yeshua, Hamashiach. Some of my ilk may say Yahweh, but I understand his real name's not Jesus. But you may hear me say Jesus just so everyone knows who we're talking about, okay? But I'm talking about a melanated Jesus. But again, since we've been sold Christianity, melanated people from around the world have been serving a non-melanated God. So it can't be about our hate. That doesn't seem to make sense. But it's interesting that when we say that the Messiah had to be melanated, he comes from a region of the world where people were melanated. You have a problem with it. It's interesting that you have a problem with it, not us. You do. So if there's hate to be thrown around, where is it coming from? Who is it coming from? Let's not play any games here. Again, not about hate. It's about presenting the truth. It's about presenting what it is. I remember years ago, someone probably on this not this video, but this series, where someone commented, who are you? You're trying to tell people, who they are and their history and all that. I'm like, okay, so wait. It's okay. And this person happened to be someone who's not melanated. And I said, So it's okay if you tell me what my history is, and it's okay for you to tell me who I am and who we are, but it's not okay for me to say who I am and who we are. It's not okay for me to teach the people who look like me, who share my background, who share my ancestry. It's not okay for me to tell them where they come from. That doesn't seem to make sense. But why is it okay for you who do not share our ancestry, our struggle, dare I say, do not share our plight? It's okay for you to tell us who we are. You see, brothers and sisters, this since we have this ability to reason, have this ability to think, that we can read, that we're educated, then it behooves us to do the research. It behooves us to do the footwork. It behooves us to figure out who we are. Where's our history? Is there something more to us? Is there something more to black or brown people? Is it something else? Is it something more than just slavery? Something more than just chattel slavery? Surely that is one of the things that mark us as a people. I understand that. I get it. Because we're like the logo of slavery. I didn't say we're the only people who have ever been enslaved, but we are pretty much the logo of slavery. But is there something else? Does it get a little deeper? I submit to you, brothers and sisters, it indeed gets deeper. And this is that lesson that's going to take you deeper. I can only put you on the path, on the journey to learning and discovering who you are. It's up to you to complete the journey. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start getting into our lesson. And as I said in my opening monologue, we're going to start way back with another boat, Noah's boat. So with that, let's go all the way back to Genesis. We're going to go all the way back to Genesis, and we're going to go to Genesis chapter 10. We want to look at a couple of things. Genesis chapter 10. We're going to start at 10 and 1, actually. 10 and 1. Let me put that do not disturb so I don't have noises while I'm teaching this lesson. Okay, so let's continue. We're going to start at verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Yaphan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, and Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Japhan, Elisha, and Tarshish, and Kittim, and Dodanim. And by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, and every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Okay, so if we just pause right there, these are the sons of Japheth. Now in these sons, you're going to get, out of these, you're going to get the Greeks, the Romans, Italians. You're going to get all these that we would call today the Europeans, Russians, all these people, they come out of Japheth. Primarily the non-melanated nations, primarily. Most. And then you'll understand through genetics that a lot of the other subcultures, this whole race idea is fairly new. It's not biblical. Biblical is tribes. But this whole race idea, okay, you have these subcultures and stuff like that, right? That's how they're so similar. It's like Irish and Scottish, similar. Obviously, some will get offended today. We're not the same. I get it. I said similar. That's all I said. Okay, similar. A lot of the Asian nations, some are similar. I'm not saying they're the same. I said they're similar. Okay, so what we have here is with some of these the European nations, okay? A lot of the European nations came from right here, okay? Greek, Roman, Italian, Russian, you name it, Swedish, you name it, okay? That's what we have here. Moving on to Ham, verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan, okay? This is Hamites, Cushites. Think of all the African nations out there. Let's Mizraim is Egypt. Okay, so Egypt and Libya. Okay, so do you have a bunch of nations there now? You get Ugandan and Kenyan. Okay, these are like subsets, right? Just that come from them. But Ham, in which we're going to read in a moment, these are all of the African nation. Okay, father of the dark-skinned nations. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of them here. Then we're going to go to the Compact Bible Dictionary. Let me go to 20 and 21 real quick. 20 says this. And these are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries and in their nations. Okay. And unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber. Okay. This is the first Hebrew. Okay. The sons of Japhet the elder, even to him were children born. Okay. Even to him were children born. All right. So we're going to look at a couple of these things here, and let's see, that's 20, 21, and we're going to also read 31 and 32. And it says here, these are the sons of Shem after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. And these are the families of the son of Noah after their generations, in their nation, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. These are the nations, these are the head, these are the patriarchs of these various families, of these what we call races. Okay, this is where all the races, all the population of the world, this is where they come from. Okay, now I'm going to read real quick the Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary here. So we can read of Ham, so we can show people that, you know, hey, all black people are not the same. Remember what I said to Europeans, and, you know, I said you got Scottish, Irish, and stuff like that. And I said, okay, similar, not the same. And I said, you know, the Asian nations, you know, Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Filipino, all different. Okay, they'll tell you we're not all the same. Okay, they're all Asian, but they're not all the same, and they're all Asian from that region of the world, but they're not all the same. Just the same thing. Okay. Same thing when it comes to people of color. We're not all the same. Look similar, but we're not all the same. And you're going to see that a lot throughout this lesson. But the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary of Ham, okay, says what? The Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor, he's the beginning of the dark races, but not the Negroes. Remember, because Negro is not even, Negro is not even a race. Okay, that was a designation given to us, and we're going to get into the proverbs and bywords. Okay, we'll get into that, but not the Negro. But the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites. Guess what? That's the exact same thing that we read here for Shem. Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan. A lot of names have been changed throughout the years. A lot of names have been changed. The same thing. See, they knew that there was a bit of a difference, because there is. That means not all black people came from Ham. Not all brown people came from Ham. Not all. A lot, not all. So who is our progenitor? Well, my friends, that would be Shem. That would be Shem. We come from Shem. We are Shemitic. Okay? As we read, return the sons of Ham. Okay, we read that of Shem, and unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber. Okay, Shem. Now the children of Shem, 22. Elam and Asher and Avexad and Lud and Aram. And the children of Aram, Uz and Ul and Gether and Mash. And Avexad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. Okay, that's how you get Eber. So now we start to understand what's going on. These are those generations. These are these different nations by the father, by the house, the created nation or tribe. These are these nations, right? This whole race concept came centuries later. Okay, so we're going to go to Psalm 105. Let's go to Psalm 105. Since we have a lot of ground to cover, we may actually move a bit fast, but at the same time, we'll be throwing up graphics on the screen for you so you can see the differences of, you know, Hamites and Shemites, okay? So just so you can see the difference. Okay, but follow along with me. Psalm 105, and I'm going to read 17, which reads, "And he sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant." Okay, Joseph was sold. Okay, he's one of the sons of Jacob, right? He was sold for a servant. Okay, and let's see what else happened. 23 to 27. 23. "Israel also came into Egypt, and Jacob sojourned in the land of" where? Ham. Jacob sojourned in the land of Ham. "And he increased his people greatly and made them stronger than their enemies." Okay, they start to increase. Okay. And 25, "And he turned their heart to hate his people, to deal subtly with his servants. He sent Moses his servant and Aaron, whom he had chosen. And they showed his signs among them and wonders in the land of Ham." Okay, black Egyptians and black Israelites. Okay, now I could just simply say Egyptian and I understand that they're melanated. I could just simply say Israelites and I understand that they're melanated. I'm only saying that for distinction so people know what we're talking about. For some people, this lesson is like the first thing they've seen on this platform, on this channel. Okay, so I'm just saying that. Typically I won't say, okay, black Egyptians. I'll just say Egyptians because mentally we know that they're black. So we have Egyptians and Israelite in the same place. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to Genesis. We're going to go to Genesis 42. Genesis 42. So we just saw that Jacob dwelled there, right? Jacob dwelled there. He dwelled in the land of Ham. So now we're in 42. Let's read the first 8 verses. And let's look at this real quick. First 8 verses. "Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt," that's what we read in the Psalms, "Jacob said unto his sons, Why do you look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob, sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him." Right? Because Benjamin was like the youngest. "And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the ground." Okay, so with this, I want you guys to understand that Joseph, his brothers, sold him, okay, to Egypt. His brothers sold Joseph into Egypt. He was there for a while, and he became like the second in command. Okay, he became the second in command, and the reason they sold him is because the vision that he had from before. His vision was that, hey, his brothers were going to bow down before him, and his father Jacob was like, okay, wait, your brothers are going to bow before you, and I'm going to bow before you. We're all going to bow before you, kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing, but he said we're going to bow before you. And he was like, that's just my vision, that's just my dream, kind of thing. So anyway, they didn't like that idea, and so they sold him. Many years later, Joseph, who looks like an Egyptian, who passed for an Egyptian, okay, was in charge, and they had to ask him for victuals. They had to ask him for food. We're going to drop to 23. "And they knew not that Joseph understood them." They did not know that he still understood Hebrew. He still spoke Hebrew. "For he spake unto them by an interpreter." He was talking to them through Egyptian interpreter. okay, even though he understood him, okay, because he knew his brothers sold him. Now, he probably looked like an Egyptian because as a Hebrew, maybe, perhaps, not all, but perhaps his beard, his beard may have been, first of all, he was a lot younger, okay? He was a lot younger. It's probably like a decade later, okay? But he was a lot younger, okay? Maybe not. Maybe he could have had a beard. Then, being Egyptian, he may not have any beard. Then, of course, he's wearing Egyptian apparel, Egyptian garb. You see all the things that all the pictures that you see, the depictions of Egyptians and stuff. So he was dressed completely different. You guys see on the markings on the wall, the Egyptian, you can tell the Egyptian from the Hebrew slave, notice the color of their skin. Okay, they look very, very similar. Okay, we see all these depictions of Egyptians and stuff, right? And usually they will keep more of a smooth skin, okay? And they typically don't have beards sometimes. They will wear like little makeup and markings and things like that. And Horus and Osiris and they all these type of things, right? They worship different gods, stuff like that. I'm not saying that's what Joseph did. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he looked like them. Okay, Egyptians. He looked like Egyptians. Therefore, his brothers didn't recognize him. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to Exodus. Okay, so we're going to go from Joseph to Moses. Exodus chapter 2. Chapter 2. We're going to go 15 through 19, which reads, "Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelled in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well." And he sat down by a well. "Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Ruel, their father said, 'How is it that ye are come so soon today?'" Like, how'd you get back so fast, right? "And they said, 'An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and also drew water enough for us and watered the flocks.'" Basically, an Egyptian helped us. They were speaking of Moses, and they called Moses an Egyptian. Now, you and I know that Moses is not an Egyptian, but they mistaked him for an Egyptian. Why is that? Could it be, that maybe he looked like an Egyptian? Could it be that he looked like an Egyptian at the time? Maybe he looked like one. Maybe he had on Egyptian apparel at the time because he just fled out of Egyptian. That is stand to reason that he just fled because now Pharaoh wanted to kill him. Even though he grew up in Pharaoh's household, and now Pharaoh wanted to kill him, and so he fled, and he rests, and he helped out these young ladies with the water and stuff. All right? Does that at least make sense? Does that at least stand to reason? Okay. So, and they said, "An Egyptian helped us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for them and watered the flock." An Egyptian helped us. Now we're gonna jump on over to Exodus chapter 4 as you guys look at the screen there. Exodus chapter 4. We're going to read the first 6 verses. Let's look at a couple of miracles that Moses performed. "And Moses answered and said, 'But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, The Lord has not appeared unto thee.' And the Lord said unto him, 'What is this? What is that in thy hand?' And he said, 'A rod.' And he said, 'Cast it to the ground.' And he cast it to the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from before it. And the Lord said unto Moses, Put forth thy hand and take it by the tail, and he put forth his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand." Okay? These are the miracles that you see in the Charlton Heston, 10 Commandments. These are the miracles that they show on television, that they'll show in a movie. But we're going to get to a miracle that they don't really show on screen. that they may believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the God of Jacob had appeared unto thee. Okay, and here in 6, he said, and the Lord said furthermore unto him, put now thine hand into thy bosom. Okay, see me put my hand into this cloak here? I just put my hand in there like that, right? Put thou thy hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow, white as snow. If I take my hand out and it is white like snow, white like the rest of this garment, white, that'd be a pretty big miracle, right? Right. So now the miracle was that it turned white as snow, or leprous as snow. And then he said, put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. Turned again as his other flesh. That was a miracle. But you're not going to see that. You don't see that miracle very often when it's depicted in movies, because typically it's not depicted at all. You have to consider the implications here. Now, of course, you look at your screen, it will look maybe something like a person with vitiligo or something. Now, yes, I understand that is a disease, but we need a visual aid here. Okay, I'm using it as a visual aid. Okay, since I'm not the Most High or the Messiah, I cannot perform the miracle myself. Okay, but it would look maybe something, a person with vitiligo. Okay, his hand is melanated, and then it's not melanated. Put his hand back in his bosom again, bring it back out, and is melanated again as his other flesh. Let's just keep going, brothers and sisters. We have to understand that the Hebrews were a melanated people. They come from a region of the world where 2/3 of the people were 3 sons. 2/3 of the people were melanated. Right? Japhet and his people moved up north into the area we call Europe. Ham and his people were south of where Shem was, but in Africa, and they primarily stayed there in Africa. Africa is the land of Ham. I've been there. Whereas Shem and his people were in what we call the Middle East, which is really not the Middle East. That's just what we're calling it. I'm just calling it that so you know what area I'm talking about. But that was the area. That was where you see Jerusalem. That's where that whole area over there. That's where Shem, that's where his people were. And as you can see when you look at a map, that area is still connected to Africa. If you pay attention to the images on your screen. But we're not done, brothers and sisters. We got a lot more to cover. Let's go on over to Job real quick. Because yes, Hamites were a melanated people, but again, we didn't come from Ham. But Shemites were a melanated people as well. Job 30 and 30. Job 30:30, which reads, my skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. My skin is black. That really doesn't need any interpretation. And in fact, if you go to other places, and you may see words like, swarthy, still means black. It's still dark, still means black. Now, the people who we're told are the Jews, does this seem to match what's going on here? Does this seem to be it? And we're talking about the color. This lesson is the color and the curses. We want to identify the color. My skin is black. Okay, maybe that's not enough. Maybe we should just simply go to the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon, we'll go to The very first chapter, we'll read, let's see, with chapter 1, we'll read 5 and 6. And it says, I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. Look not upon me, because I am black. That's twice. Because the sun has looked upon me, kissed me, okay, touched me. My mother's children were angry with me, that made me the keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept. But I am black, but comely. I am black, but comely. Look not upon me, because I am black. Color matters. How else are you going to identify who they are? I am black. I am black. Look not upon me, because I am black. My skin is black. This is what you're seeing. This is what we're seeing in the Bible. Not enough. No problem. I'll show you a few more. Let's go to Jeremiah. Skip up 2 books. Let's go to Jeremiah. And we're going to go to chapter 8. Jeremiah chapter 8. And we just want one verse. 21. 21 says, for the hurt of the daughter of my people I am hurt. I am black, and astonishment has taken hold on me. I am black, and astonishment has taken hold on me. Again, this is Jeremiah 8:21. Another place says I am black. Another spot. We're going to do it again when we jump over to Jeremiah 14:2. See, these are the areas that are ignored, that has gone ignored. Nobody pays any attention to it. It's not a big deal. Oh, it's not important. Then how are you going to interpret prophecy that has anything to do with Israel? And many people have already thought that they've interpreted it, but now that you have this new information, how accurate do you think their interpretation is when it comes to prophecy dealing with Israel itself? The people, not the country. Let's continue. Jeremiah 14 verse 2 says this, Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. Oh, that's just symbolic. They're just, it's like, depressed, or, famine, or, Okay. That still doesn't undo what we just read. It doesn't undo what we've read thus far. And it certainly doesn't undo what we are going to continue to read. Because we're going to go to the next book, which is Lamentations. In Lamentations, we're going to go to chapter 4 and verse 8. Okay, and it says, their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick. Now, they are famished. They are starving. But let me ask you something. The people who we have been taught that are Jews, let's say they starve. Okay, let's say they go hungry. Are they going to turn black as a coal? Tell me, do non-melanated people turn black due to starvation? Again, their visage, their image is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets of their skin, cleaved to their bones. It is withered. It is like I say, they're malnourished. They're starving. This is starvation. But again, their image, their visage is black. Really black. And these are Israelites. All of these are Israelites. Let's go to 5 and 10. 5 verse 10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. The famine that I was talking about. Our skin is black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Our skin is black. Our skin is black. I am black. I'm black. 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 It's almost like that old early 90s movie, CB4. I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blackity, blackity, black. I'm just making a point, guys. The point is, we can identify the color of who Israel is. Now, of course, we're not just simply saying, oh, they're black, they must be Israel, and case closed, that's it, that's all it takes, that is proof. Of course, I'm not suggesting that, because again, Hamites are black as well. So I'm not saying that, but I am laying a foundation. At least at this point, I may not have proven who is Israel, but I have proven who is not. So let's keep going. We're going to go over to Numbers. Excuse me. We're going to go to Numbers, and we want to go to Numbers 12. Numbers 12, and we're going to start at verse 5 when we get there. Numbers 12, we're going to go to verse 5 through 10. Numbers 12, 5, starting at 5 through 10. Let's look at Moses' sister. And the Lord came down in a pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, hear now my words, and if there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and I will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches, and the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. So he will see a similitude, right? Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So they spoke against him because he had took that second wife. He took the Ethiopian wife. They had a problem with that. And this is them getting reprimanded for it, right? And look what happened. He said, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. Remember Moses' hand? Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. She was white as snow. She was white. I'm not saying she turned into a white person. She was still a black person, but her skin was white. We might call that albinism. It's a form of leprosy, right? There's two forms of leprosy. Let me explain. There's a form of leprosy like this that turns your skin white. You can be albino, it can be vitiligo, so on and so forth, right? Now the other leprosy is the ones with open sores and the smell, the terrible stench and the sickness and the affection. It's contagious. It's two different types of leprosy present in the Bible. Okay, this is one. Okay, so she became leprous, white as snow. So you have Joseph mistaken as an Egyptian, and we've seen the pictures of Egyptians. You have Moses mistaken as an Egyptian. Not only that, you have Miriam. We know she has a particular color. We know she's melanated because we just looked at the color of the Hebrews, the color of them, black, and we know there's different shades of black, but black. So we know she was that, and then all of a sudden she was turned white, leprous, white, kind of like Moses' hand when it came out white, leprous as snow. Okay, so we have that. So mistaken as an Egyptian. Now we got one more person who was mistaken as an Egyptian. Okay, let's go all the way to the New Testament and let's look at the book of Acts. Okay, and when we look here, we're going to go to 21 actually. Go all the way to chapter 21 in the book of Acts. Okay. And we're going to start at 37. 37 through 39. And what does it say over here? It says, and as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? Who said, canst thou speak Greek? So they asked him, he said, can you speak Greek? Of course, Paul could speak Greek. Art not thou that Egyptian? They said, aren't you that Egyptian? So wait. We're all the way in the New Testament, in Jerusalem, under Roman occupation. Okay, they're not in Africa right now. And this captain said, are you an Egyptian? Which before these days made an uproar and led it out of the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers, so on and so forth. He said, but Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Sicilia, a city of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people. Okay, so this is Paul speaking. Okay, so he understood Greek. He could speak that. And then if we read further, he starts speaking into them in the Hebrew tongue. Okay, when we read the very next verse, he starts to speak to them in the Hebrew tongue. He was mistaken as an Egyptian. Paul looked like an Egyptian. Now again, if you guys have been looking at the screen, what did Egyptians look like? That's why this is important. A history that has been lost to us. History is so vitally important. That was right in front of us in our Bible, but it was taken from you, repackaged, repurposed, put into another language. Went from the Hebrew to the Greek, Hebrew, a little Aramaic, to the Greek, Latin, then English. And most people couldn't even tell you were in it. Most people couldn't even tell you that it was about you. Obviously about the Most High and the Messiah, but it's also about Israel. You probably didn't know it was about you. So we're going to continue to look at this. It's important to get the understanding. Okay? So he was mistaken as an Egyptian. Now, you're probably wondering, why did all this stuff happen? And we're going to get to that. But let's see something that the Most High said real quick. Okay, Amos, we're going to read the first 2 verses in chapter 3. Amos, first 2 verses in chapter 3. He said, Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore, I will punish you for all your iniquities, or I will punish you for all your sin, or I will punish you for all your transgressions. We're going to get into all of that. We are going to get into all of that. Remember, this is 4 lessons, guys. I want you to look at this one, but look at the next, every Shabbat this month, there's another lesson. Okay? Every Shabbat this month, I want you to look at the next 4 lessons. Okay? But you only have I known. You're the only family. Notice it says family, not the races, right? You're the only family that I've known. This is the family that he brought up out of Egypt. This is the family that he gave the covenant, the service of God, the oracles. Israel's the only family that he's done that. It's the only family that he made the kings and priests, or were intended to be kings and priests. We got a series on that. It's the only one. That's why it's a huge responsibility. To him much is given, much is required. And Israel, unfortunately, dropped the ball. So we're going to start getting into the curses of all of this. Okay? We're going to start getting into that. You only have I known. Okay? Now from there, let's go ahead and go to Daniel real quick. Go back about 3 books. We're going to go to Daniel, and we're going to go to Daniel chapter 9. Now, because I want to show you that something happened. I could read it after, but nah, I don't want to do that. I want to read it before. Daniel 9, and I'm going to start at verse 4, okay? Daniel 9, verse 4. And I prayed unto the Lord my God and made my confessions and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping a covenant and mercy to them that love him and to them that keep his commandments. Now I'm going to read 5 and then I'm going to drop down to 9. What does he say? What Daniel said? He said, we have sinned and have committed iniquity and have done wickedly and have rebelled, even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments. We're going to get into what all that was. He said, we messed up. We sinned. We did this. Remember, you only have I known. And I'm going to punish you because of your iniquity. Daniel said, we messed up because of our iniquity, right? So now we're going to go down. We're going to read 9 through 12. 9 says this, to the Lord our God belong mercies and forgivenesses, though we have rebelled against him. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God, to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants, the prophets. Okay, so you go look at the Torah. He said we didn't do that. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, walking away from it, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore, the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against him. For we have sinned against him, and he has confirmed his word, which he spake against us and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil. For under the whole heaven has not been done as has been done upon Jerusalem. So he confirmed what he said he was going to do. The curse. Oh, well, what is the curse? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's where we're going next. Because Daniel already said that we messed up. He's already said that we screwed up. Okay, he said we messed up, we transgressed the law, we did not obey the voice of God, and now the curses are pouring upon us. The curses that you told us that was going to happen to us, they started. They're poured upon us. And what we got to understand, these curses, they roll out. They're not all at once. They unfold over time. More curses, more curses, more curses. Okay? It's not a generation necessarily where all the curses that we're going to talk about happen to all of them in one generation. No. It spills out over time. This has been a nice, good, long smoke, right? It's like when you smoke ribs for 30 hours. Okay, this is not a microwave deal here. This is a long, slow unfolding of punishment. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy 28. We're going to look at some of these curses. Deuteronomy 28. Now we're going to focus on the curses part, because I'm going to tell you right now, I want you to notice something before we even read a little bit of it. I want you to notice something. In Deuteronomy 28, there's blessings and curses. You start from verse 1 and you get up to about 14. And those are the blessings. You go 15 to about 68, and those are the curses. And those are not all the curses that are contained in the Bible, okay? But this is a large concentration of them. And I want you to understand something. Notice what I just said. Verse 1 through 14 are blessings. 1 through 14. 15 through 68 are curses. Now, will I read each and every one that's contained therein? No, not all. I'll skip around a little bit, but you're going to get some of this right. You're going to understand what some of this is happening. I mean, what is happening with some of these. You're going to recognize some of these curses. Some of these curses have happened in the past. Some of the curses are happening right now, today. So it's not just the color. We're going into the curses to let you understand that, this is how you can identify who Israel is, when the color alone may fail you. Because there's plenty of Israelites by blood that may not have as much melanin in their skin. See, the difference with the sons of Noah as Ham, he's typically dark and all these dark hues, right? With the exception of albinism, right? With the exception of someone being an albino or someone not being all the way, Hamite, right? But pretty much dark. And you have Yafet, which are the non-melanated people, all the white people, right? And they're pretty much white. Not that many different shades of white. There's pale Irish, Scottish white that you would say, man, they look like milk bread, just really, really white, until you can get some to get down to about tan. Okay? Nice light little tan. But there are no white people that get all the way dark. Okay? There are no white people that get all the way black. And someone's completely white. They don't get all the way black. Then you got Shem that's right in the middle that runs the spectrum. Now some people are like, oh, well, race mixing and no. That's not always the case. Although that has happened. Don't get me wrong, because we're going to talk about that. That has happened. But Shem runs the spectrum. The color spectrum. So let's just keep that in mind. We're going to go ahead and start with these curses. We're going to look at some of these curses here for you. We're going to start at 15. And he says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these, what? Curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Overtake means you cannot get away. It's going to get you. 16. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. Cursed shall thou be in thy basket and in the store. Cursed shall be in the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of the land, and an increase of their kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Okay, curse. Cursed shall thou be when thou come in, cursed thou shalt be when thou goest out. Nothing but curses. We're going to skip down a little bit. Skip down to 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies, and thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them. It shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. If we look at a map, we look at the places where Israel has gone. Particularly if you go look at 70 AD, and we're going to read that. But you go to 70 AD, they scattered out in all directions towards the south, a little bit towards the west of Jerusalem, some, and then towards the south, flooding into Africa. Why? So they can blend in. That's why. Just because we can pass as a Egyptian, we can pass as an Ethiopian, we can pass as a Ugandan or Kenyan or Nigerian, we can pass as these other tribes in Africa. Now, knowing that Messiah was also a Jew, an Israelite from the line of Judah, therefore he was melanated, he was black, and when he was a baby he had to hide out in Africa. Okay, we're going to keep going. We'll get to that. Okay, let's look at some more of these curses. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's look at some more of these curses. And thy carcass shall be meat unto the fowls of the air and unto the beasts of the earth, and no man shall fray them away. That has happened. There's a lot of grave sites, you should say, where Israel has been, hung on trees and ran through with spikes and stuff like that. And the fowls of the air, the buzzards, the vultures will eat their flesh throughout history. 27, and the Lord will smite thee with the botch of Egypt, and with the emeralds, and with the scab, and with the itch whereof thou cannot be healed. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. Okay? Always worried. Always in fear of your life, fear of your health, fear of your well-being. Always living in a perpetual unease. Sickness and disease. And thou shalt grope at noonday, and as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. You will be taken advantage of. You will be hunted. You will be killed. You will be derided. You will be chided. You will be taken advantage of. You will be fodder. You will be labor. You will be the tail and not the head. This is the curse of Israel. These are the curses. These are the things that are going to happen to Israel. No one will save you. What else will happen? Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Look at this. So you're going to betroth a wife. You're going to have a wife. Is that marked with slavery? You're going to have a wife, and another man is going to sleep with her? Do we have any examples of that?
Come on.
Pop, where are you taking Mom?
Get back to work. Cecil, come back here, boy. Come here. Look at me, boy. Don't you lose your temper with that man. This is world. We just living in it. You hear me? Now get on back to work.
Pop, what you gonna do?
Hey. What are you looking at? Huh? Who wants to go next? You get back to work.
Hey, you, get some of the hands help dig a hole for his paw. Hurry up. Stop crying. I'm gonna have you in the house now.
It continues, thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell in it, because you built a house for your master. And thou shalt plant a vineyard, and thou shalt not gather the grapes thereof, meaning you won't get to eat it, but you're going to plant a vineyard, and you're going to gather it for your master. These are the things that the Most High said will happen since you broke it. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof, meaning the master is going to take it from you. Thy ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. It's going to be taken from you and won't be given back to you. Thy sheep shall be given unto thy enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Your enemies are going to take everything you have from you, including your children, and there'll be nothing you can do about it. So it happened to them in the past and on the continents and countries that they happen to dwell in at the time, and through the various captivities, including the American captivity. One thing about it, we can make a mistake of who Israel is, but these curses don't miss. These curses have perfect aim. So in case you're wondering, why does this seem to happen to black people and brown people? Why does it seem like we get the short end of the stick? Why does it seem like we always get a raw deal? Why does it seem like we are always taken advantage of? Most High said, you only have I known. Daniel said, we broken the covenant. We went away from our God. And Most High said, these things are going to happen because you did it. He says in another place, I put before you blessings and curses, life and death. Therefore choose life. We woke up and chose violence, and we're losing. 32, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. So you're going to get your children taken away from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Does that sound familiar?
1841, New Orleans, ground zero for the slave trade.
How much?
It's auction day, the day every slave fears the most. In the first half of the 19th century, over 500,000 slaves are sold at auction. It's a business worth $2 billion to the Southern economy. Since the cotton boom, the value of slaves has skyrocketed. Now men cost $1,000, women $800, children $500. Solomon Northrop, an educated free man from the North, was kidnapped into slavery.
Go, boy, you come over here.
He would make us hold up our heads, walk us briskly back and forth, while customers would feel our hands and arms and bodies. Make us open up our mouths and show our teeth, precisely as a jockey examines a horse which he is about to barter for or purchase. Scars upon a slave's back were considered evidence of a rebellious or unruly spirit and hurt his sale.
Take the top off.
90% of all African Americans are slaves. 4 million men, women, and children.
We had based this country on everyone having inalienable rights to freedom and equality, and yet we created a system of abject persecution.
Slaves are fattened for auction, like livestock. Dark-skinned men are bought for the fields, light-skinned women for the house. Traders lie about their ages, even dye a slave's gray hairs.
For the plantation owners, it was like just going to your local supermarket to get sugar or flour. They had become so desensitized to the humanity of the slave that they did not see them as human beings.
Buyers demand the most fertile slaves for breeding. The most expensive are light-skinned teenage virgins. Rape is common. Eliza's from a state plantation. She's being sold with her 2 children, Emily and Randall. In Louisiana, it's illegal for children under 11 to be taken from their parents.
Boy, come over here.
It happens all the time.
Dog on this one. Show them teeth.
You know, 140 years is not a really long time in the context of history. So it's hard for me to believe that blacks didn't have any rights here. They weren't treated as human beings. They were treated like animals, essentially.
Sir, please.
All right, you go. Measure their business.
Oh, my life.
Over half the sales at auction will tear a family apart.
If you've ever been ate, to think of being separated from your mother and your father and sold and you'll never see them again. The horror of that, the poignancy of all of that, and yet that's the kind of thing that happened across the South up until the end of slavery.
Okay, my final offer. 1,000 for that man. Yeah. 900 for that man. The woman there, $700.
Please, buy my child. Sir!
I have seen mothers kissing for the last time the faces of their dead offspring, but never have I seen such an exhibition of intense grief as when Eliza was parted from her child.
Come on, you go.
The fruit of thy land and all thy labor shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up. And thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed always. It's always going to happen to you. This is what you got coming. If you break it now, at the time Moses is letting these guys know what's going to go down, it hadn't happened to them yet. Okay, they're trying to get into the promised land. Good things are going to happen. Because they're going into at this time. So all this is a future prophecy. The curses are going to come. By the time you get to Daniel, you say, oh, these curses have failed. Here we go. All Israel has royally screwed up, right? Let's drop down to 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. We're going to become a astonishment. Wow. Not in a good way. A proverb. Not in a good way. And a byword. What are some of these proverbs and bywords that we're known by? Unique to us. We're winning a race in all the derogatory names that we are called. Just look at the screen. Throughout the ages. Look at who we are throughout the ages. Look at all these names throughout the ages. Some derogatory names that we're called that today. We're going to drop down to 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity. In slavery, was it not the slaves, or their children wasn't sold to other people? Right? Did you guys ever see these slave bills? Your soul, your wife's soul, your children's soul. Have we not seen these have we not seen these? These curses are real. Go to 43 to 46. 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. I've heard people say a lot of times, you know, we're here in the West, we're in America, and they'll say, oh, well, a foreigner, someone else can come from another land and get all kinds of assistance and free stuff and get bank loans and can start businesses and do all that, but I can't do it, and think, well, the stranger's going to come up very high above you and you're going to be very low. See, these are some of the answers that perhaps you are looking for, or some of you may not know that you were looking for, but you're getting some of them now. You're getting some of these answers now. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him, and he shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Ain't that the truth? Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed. because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes with which he command thee. You didn't want to do it. You wanted to do your own thing. You wanted to go your own way. So guess what? These curses are going to overtake you. I told you they have perfect aim. Even if you don't know who Israel is, the curses know. Even if you don't know who Israel is, the Most High knows. And man, he has good aim when it comes to these curses. He is spot on with who he wants these curses to attack, to overtake. 46, and they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. We're not getting out of this, okay? Not on our own. The Most High, the Messiah is going to have to end all this, to lift these curses, to break these generational curses. Sure, individually, yeah, some of us can, curses can be a little lightened, can come off our shoulders a little bit, but as a nation, oh no. These curses are going to be on us as a nation. Why do you think we have an evil eye towards our brother? Why do you think we cannot even come together as a nation, as a people? We can't agree on much. Can't be around each other too much. Can't trust each other too much. The backbiting, the violence. Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until thou be destroyed. A yoke of iron. I wonder who are the people who had a yoke of iron on their neck. Because I'm wondering if the slaves had a yoke of iron on their neck. I'm wondering if that was a common occurrence when it came to slavery. Interesting. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle's flight, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. The nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, right? Wow, another language that you won't understand. And they're going to come from afar. We're going to get to the transatlantic slave trade here pretty quick. These curses. We'll get there. Don't worry, we will get there. And another thing that's a little different. Okay, so it's a bit of different language, but you say, oh well, that could be a Hamitic nation. Yeah, you're right. It's another language that we may not know. You're right. But what about a nation whose fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young? A fierce countenance. What about this who Israel was not used to seeing, a non-melanated people, a white-skinned people? What about that fierce countenance? Something they were not used to seeing in a language that they don't know. When did that happen in history? And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or the flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee, until he has destroyed you. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trusted throughout all the land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God had given thee. This is back then, because this is one of these other nations who would come and invade and take you away captive. Take over your land, occupy your land. No different than the first century. No different than the Babylonian captivity, the Medo-Persian captivity, the Greek captivity, the Roman captivity, the trans-Saharan slave trade, and the transatlantic slave trade. All these various captivities. tossing you to and fro, running you up out of your place. 53, and thou shalt eat the fruit of thy own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God has given thee in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thy enemy shall distress thee, because you had no food. But I won't dwell on that. I'll just keep going. 54, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother and toward the wife of his bosom and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave, because it's so bad. Family's gonna get busted up, and we have a evil eye towards each other. We're gonna despise one another. In this case, it's man to leave. 55, so that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall leave, because he had nothing left him in the siege and in the straitness, where thy enemy shall distress thee and all thy gates. The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son and toward her daughter. We are going to hate one another. Ravish one another. This was early on. These are these curses that are going to happen. He said these things are going to happen if you do not listen to me, if you break the covenant, if you go away, if you choose death. He said, I put before you life and death. Choose life. We chose death. And this is what death looked like throughout the ages. Throughout the ages. We're going to go to 61. We're going to go to 61. Also, every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, them will the Lord bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. There's a whole lot of conditions that black people are predisposed to, brown people are predisposed to, right? Oh, I got the sugar, I got diabetes, I got high blood pressure and hypertension. Sickle cell anemia. go on, but you guys can kind of look it up. You can kind of look it up. Even some things that our enemies would place upon us, do experiments and stuff like Tuskegee Airmen. They can do certain experiments on you and introduce certain diseases, which are not written in this book. Right? This is what we're dealing with, brothers and sisters. These are the curses. This is what Israel chose. This is what Israel chose. And ye shall be left few in number, whereas ye were as the stars of heaven for multitude, because thou wouldest not obey the voice of the Lord thy God. We were a lot. We're not as many as we were. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord will rejoice over you to destroy you and to bring you to naught. And ye shall be plucked from off the land whither thou goest to possess it. So we're out of Jerusalem, right? Self-evident. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people. Black people are everywhere now. From the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. If we look at that now, I've had the luxury, by the grace of the Most High Yah, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to travel the world. And I will continue to travel. And I've gone to various places. And there is a black presence pretty much everywhere. It may not be as much, but it's still there. Been over to the Philippines, there's a black presence there. And I'm not talking about visitors. I'm not talking about expats. I'm talking about historically. Obviously, I've been over to Africa, so there's a black presence. I went over to the slave house. I was over in West Africa, over in Togo, and I had the pleasure actually to go visit the slave house. I wanted to, for this purpose specifically. I wanted to have feet on the ground. I wanted my feet on that soil. I wanted to walk into that. I wanted to be under the same sun, under the same air, under the same conditions. I wanted to experience it, and so I did. So I went over to Togo, and I was able to go on this particular tour, and I went into that slave house, and over there they've been taken over by, they had French occupation, so they speak French over there in Togo. But so I went over there and I was listening to it and learning a lot by an interpreter, my guide. And so the, I guess, tour guide was telling us about the house. And I put it's a video here on the channel where I was talking about, you can go to that particular video on the channel. But I'll just tell you in brief here that I went there and was telling us how it worked. He said the slaves were brought in there. And if slaves would come every couple of weeks, come over to that house over there, and they would go into these portholes. And if you see pet doors, modern day pet doors, and they're not much bigger than that, but big enough for a human to crawl under, right? The slaves did not walk through the front door. They crawled under the house, and there was probably about 6 pet doors on this side going down, and 6 more, so probably maybe 12 pet doors on one side of the house, or the front of the house, and they would crawl in under there and they would stay underneath the house. This is in Africa. These are Hamitic people. Hamites had Hebrews under the house. So many people they would teach that, oh, Africans, so Africans. No, not true. Not true. Not completely true. By and large, it was Africans or Hamites selling Shemites, if we want to be technical. Now, sure, if there were some people who wanted to cleave unto Israel, through relationships and things like that, then yeah, they probably had to suffer the same fate, but that was not everybody. Because Israel came out of Egypt in the first place, a mixed multitude. So sure, there are people who, join unto there, but those curses will hit Israel right between the eyes. And so we're going into the slave house, and so he was telling us that's how they came in. They go into the slave house, we go inside, we step inside, original wood. There was like 2 pieces of wood that they had to replace, otherwise you'd fall through the floor. But everything else was original wood, stuff like that. And they had a porthole in, and when you walk in, they had pictures and stuff, and they had the transatlantic slave trade, those slave maps, and they had they had pictures of, or depictions of slaves during that time. Guess what they looked like? They look like us. And they had maps and things like that. We saw that. And then they show us in the middle of the living room, what would be called the living room today, there's a square door on the floor. It had a little rope on it. And you pull that rope up, and that's how they drop the food down in the floor so they can eat. So underneath there, and I was able to go underneath the house, you would have to squat the entire time. It was not high enough for you to stand, so you had to squat or crawl under there, crawl around, and that was it. That's all you were able to do. And I was under there anywhere between 5 and 9 minutes. Okay, we want to round up. You can say 10 minutes, but I doubt it was anywhere past that. So I was under there 10 minutes, and it was a surreal experience. It really was, to imagine that our ancestors had to go through something like that. I can feel the anguish and the desperation and the despair. I can feel that in less than 10 minutes. Now imagine you had to do that for a lot longer. So I asked the tour guide, the one who was telling us about this slave house, I asked him, well, how long were people, how long did they have to stay there? And he said they stayed anywhere from 2 or 3 weeks at a time. They were waiting for another ship to come in. I said, these are the people who were coming to buy them, correct? Yes, it was Europeans. They come to buy the slaves. Now, when he would let them out, what they would do is that they would bring the slaves out, and they would circle the house one more time. And I asked him, I said, well, what does that mean? I mean, them circling the house, 7 times. He said they circled it 7 times. He said that was symbolic of them never seeing Africa again. And they would walk out probably about 50 yards or so. The ships would be waiting out because it was close to the beach. And the ships would be waiting out there to pick them up, and it was over from that point.
From about 1525 to 1866, 12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly transported across the Atlantic, a journey that approximately 2 million of them would not survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of enslaved people per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo. Before boarding the ships at African port cities, enslaved people were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads forcibly shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, enslaved people lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch those enslaved who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved below deck, enslaved people would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age. Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unchained in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There were no sanitary facilities of any kind. Enslaved people were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions when combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck. Disease was rampant. Dysentery, malaria, yellow fever, smallpox, measles, and influenza ravaged the enslaved and crew members alike. The enslaved people generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender, with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Enslaved people were also subject to forced exercise, which sometimes included dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Enslaved captives deemed disobedient were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat o' nine tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Enslaved people who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with a speculum oris, a medieval tool used to force open a person's mouth. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew. sometimes arriving in the New World, carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful. The true extent of the horrors of the Middle Passage came to light in a 1783 court trial over the slave ship Zong. The Zong left present-day Ghana in August of 1781 with 442 enslaved on board. After a 2-month journey riddled with navigation errors, 62 enslaved people and 7 crew members had perished without reaching their destination. Disease was spreading throughout the ship, and fresh water was running dangerously low. Captain Luke Collingwood was afraid of the financial cost of more deaths. Enslaved people that died of disease were not covered by the ship's insurance, but the enslaved who drowned were. Collingwood ordered approximately 130 enslaved people thrown overboard. He claimed it was necessary to do so to halt the spread of disease. At the trial between the Zong's owners and their insurance company, the owners argued that because it was legal to kill sick animals for the health of a ship, it was legal to treat enslaved people the same. The court agreed with the ship's owners, but the trial itself exposed the horrors aboard the Zong, and its story was republished by British abolitionists with the name of the ship redacted, meant to show that this tragedy could happen on any ship transporting enslaved people across the Middle Passage. 24 years after the Zong trial, the international slave trade was outlawed in both Great Britain and the United States. It would take England an additional 26 years, and the US another 58 years, plus a civil war, before the practice of slavery was officially abolished.
65. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee for a trembling heart and failing of eyes and sorrow of mind. And thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have none assurance of thy life. And in the morning thou shalt say, would God it were even. And at even thou would say, would God it were morning. Because you're saying, you know what? When it's daytime, in the daytime you say, boy, I really wish it was nice. I wish it was nighttime. And at night you say, I wish it was the morning. You have none assurance. You're constantly vexed. You're constantly worried. You have no ease in your life. For the fear of thy heart wherewith thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thy eyes which thou shalt see. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. Thou shalt see it again no more, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you or redeem you back to your homeland. Or they're going to buy you as a slave, but they're not going to buy you to set you free. This is what we're dealing with. And we're starting to understand why the curses are that important, because it is a sign, it is a mark. It helps us identify who we are, who Israel is. It's an identifying mark. You're a scattered, lost nation. That's why I call it the 12 lost tribes of Israel. And the other folks who purport to be Jewish, and we'll deal with that later, but when were they lost? To them, they've always been Israel. When did these things, these curses, when did this happen? Let's go look throughout history. When did any of these happen? See, I find it ironic that if you ask them, when did these things happen? Of course, they can't tell you. These things, these type of things, soul, slavery, all that, leaden ships, all of it. Losing your land, Obviously, that's not their land, but losing your land, losing your children, other men sleeping with your wife, dealing with a nation whose language you do not understand, a fierce countenance. Let's not even get into the colors. When does any of this apply? And ironically, almost none of it applies to them, pretty much none of it, and all of it applies to us. Is that a coincidence or something? Let's keep going. We're going to go to 32 because we have so much ground to cover. We're going to go to 32. I'm going to start at 26. Okay, 26 says this. And I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. They won't even know that we're Israel. No one will even know. Not even you will know that you're Israel. Not even you will know that. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should behave themselves strangely, unless they should say, our hand is high and the Lord has not done all this. Of course, he has done this, right? But let's go 28. For they are a nation void of counsel, neither is there any understanding in them. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end, that they would consider what's going to happen to them in the end. If Israel would simply consider what would happen to them in the end. But no, they won't. They won't consider it. Scattered, void of counsel, and we consider what would happen at the latter end. Only if they would. Let's look at another curse. Let's look at another curse on our women. If we look at Isaiah 3 and 24. 24 said this, and it shall come to pass that instead of a sweet smell, there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle, a rent, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a stomach or a gutter of sackcloth, and a burning instead of beauty. Why is it now that our women, who were once some of the world's most beautiful women, Israelite women, the most beautiful women in all the world, have now been at the bottom of the barrel? Don't get me wrong, they were the standard of beauty. Israelite women was the standard of beauty. All the other nations wanted to be like Israel. Even in slavery, it was like that for a long time. But then when our Israelite women start to hate and despise themselves and wanted to take after other women of other nations, it didn't work out so well for them. Particularly with the hair. All the chemicals and the heat and the burning and the straightening and all that. But when we used to have the best hair, yes, that hair like wool, used to be the standard. Remember, for a while, melanated people made up 2/3. Noah only had 3 sons. 2 of them were of color. And they traded in their beauty to try to live up to the standards of the beauty today. Our people with blonde hair, our people with green and purple hair and blue. And though some of us could get straight hair, that is not typical of us. If you got it naturally, that's different. That's cool. That's fine. But if you don't have it naturally and you get it straight artificially, is that the healthiest way you can have your hair? Now I know, again, our sisters, because, the curses. But if you tell them that, Then of course they're gonna say, oh, well, I know how to take care of it. This is what you do, da 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 da. Which of course isn't the point. Is it yours? Is it natural? Now, if you ask most guys, you survey most guys, particularly us, they prefer natural. That's how it is. But botch, scab, loss of hair. Why? The curses. The curses. And instead of well set hair, baldness. Let me keep going. Revelation, when we're talking about our Creator. We're going to go over here to Revelation chapter 1. And I'm going to read 14 and 15. And it says, his head and his hairs were white like wool. Okay? Like wool. So we got wool, and white as snow. So white wool. And his eyes were as a flame of fire. So we got white wool, hair like wool, okay, white wool, and then white as snow. So we got wool, we got white, and eyes were flaming fire. And 15 says, and his feet like unto fine brass. What does fine brass look like? As if they were burned in a furnace. So fine brass, so burnt brass, right? Burnt brass. And his voice as a sound of many waters. So we got white wool, burnt brass for skin. Okay? Burnt brass for skin, white woolly hair. Okay? Didn't change anything. Just read exactly what it said. When we picked up wool, we picked up white, we picked up burnt brass. Okay? That's what our Creator looks like. Let's go to Daniel 9. Let's go to Daniel. Daniel 10 actually. Daniel 10. Daniel 10 says this. We're going to read Daniel 10, 5 and 6. And then we'll go to Daniel 7. But 5 and 6. It says this. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the countenance of the lightning, and his eyes as the lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet indeed color to polish brass. His what? Arms and feet like in the color of polished brass, and the voice of the words like the voices of multitude. Just kind of like what we read in Revelation. Okay? Like brass. Sorry, does the Ashkenaz skin look like brass like that? Woolly hair? Any of that? Let's go to 7. Daniel 7. We just want things to match up. We're going to play detective here. We're just following the clues. That's it. We'll follow the clues that are presented to us. Verse 9, 7 and 9. He said, now beheld, to the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, Revelation, wool, and white, but it's wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and the wheels as a burning. His hair was like wool, the Ancient of Days. So the Father, his hair was like wool, had a woolly texture. We're just following the clues. Now we get into the transatlantic slave trade. We look at the maps of the slave, look at the routes, look at when the Most High, when the Bible says, I'm scatter you to the four corners of the earth. When I scatter you to the four winds, just means you're going to go out in all directions. Look at the trans-Saharan slave trade, and then look at the transatlantic slave trade. But before that, You look at when Jerusalem was ransacked. You look at that. That's where it started, because it started in Jerusalem and then it spread out from there, right? But before we go there, let's go to Joel real quick. Go to Joel chapter 3 and read the first 6 verses for you real quick. And it says, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and departed my land." So people have scattered Israel, scattered along the nations, and the land in Israel is departed right now, right, people? Right? Is that right? Okay. Verse 3, "And they have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot," yep, "and sold a girl for wine that they might drink." Okay, so that sounds like what has been happening and what has happened in the past to Israel. "Yea, and what have you do with me, O Tyre and Zidon?" Okay, these are the Hamites and all the coasts of Palestine. Okay, "Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your head?" I mean, you're going to try to do something to me, but it's going to turn back on you, right? It's the Most High saying to them, right? "Because you have taken my silver and my gold," taking what they should not have taken of Jerusalem, "and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things." Now let's see what else happened here in verse 6. "The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians," that's the Greeks, "to the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border." That you might remove them far from their border. So the people have been sold. The people are being sold. This is well before the transatlantic slave trade. Okay? But it was happening before that. Remember, Israel was pretty much going from captivity to captivity to captivity to captivity. Egyptian captivity had a little bit of freedom, and then they had all these wars from judges, and they had to get liberated. Then they started getting into they started get a king with Saul, and so they fighting off the enemies there. And then of course he messed up, and then we had to get David, and David's hand was full of blood because he always had to fight to keep us free and keep us going. Had a little bit of peace when it came to Solomon, a bit of peace when it came to Solomon. And then of course after Solomon's death, the kingdom was broke up, north, south, and there was a war, and then the captivity started pouring in. Nothing but captivity after captivity after captivity. Assyrian captivity and Babylonian captivity, Medo-Persian, Greek, Roman, Trans-Saharan, transatlantic, to the American, or the captivity of the Americas, because we went everywhere. Some of us went to Australia. Some of them went to most went to South America. Some went to the Caribbean. Some went to Central America, and some went to America, where we are today. Let's look at the fall of Jerusalem over in Luke real quick. We're going to go to Luke 21. Luke 21, we just read 20 through 24. 20 says this, "And it shall come to, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is near." When Jerusalem will be left desolate, right? "Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. This is why I want to get to this part. We're going to read a passage out of Babylon Tickbot 2, which is by Rudolph Windsor. Okay, from Babylon to Timbuktu, Rudolph Windsor, right? And I'm going to read, I'm over in page 84. I want to read a passage from 84. And this, we're approaching 70 AD. Okay, so if you get the book and you turn to page 84, we're just reading from there. And to this statue, the people brought the sacrifices of pig meat, which is bad, the animal which is an abomination to the Jews. Of course, because of this religious persecution, the legitimate high priest, Onias III, and many other Jews fled into African countries such as Egypt, Ethiopia, Cyrene, or Libya today. Throughout the last 2,500 years, the main factors that have contributed to the social migration of the Jews were wars, religious persecution, and commerce. All these factors were operated and gave rise to the African Jewish population. The African Jewish population. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. And then look at what happens here. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, okay, in 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter. During the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. Fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery, the slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves, over 1 million. Fleeing from Roman persecution. What we just read in Luke. What we just read in Luke 21. And it says here, and the Lord shall scatter thee among all the people from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there shalt thou serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. What we read in Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. The prophecy is being fulfilled, and all these curses have fallen on us, as Daniel would say. All these curses have fallen on us. This prophecy and all the residue of the prophecies contained in Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68 befell the black Jews after they disobeyed the laws of God. Many nations transported the Jews into slavery, and the sons of Israel transmigrated to every continent. And transmigrated unto every continent. And again, when you look at the slave route, the slave trade, you look at their routes, look at where they went. That's majority, but they still went to other countries too. They went to some Asian countries. There's a black, but you got to do your research. There's a black presence historically in some of these Asian countries. We have Afro-Asiatic languages. We have to understand, when Most High said he scattered them in every direction, they're in every direction. Slaves, there were some slaves in Europe as well in the past. There were slaves in Europe. Slaves in Africa were slaves to the Hamites. In fact, we were a commodity to them. They sold us to the other nations. That's how they made their money. They rounded them up. How do Africans sold Africans? How do they know the difference? Well, because the Hebrews spoke Hebrew and Aramaic. I mean, we learned the other languages, obviously, but was that the only telltale? No, of course not. They worshipped differently. They avoided eating pig. They rested on the Sabbath. Their customs were a little bit different than those of the Hamites. So it wasn't that hard to tell. And although we look similar to one another, to other nations, but to each other, we can tell the difference for the most part. You ask our Asian brethren out there, do they tell the difference from other Asians? For the most part, yeah, they do. Same thing with Europeans. It may not be obvious to us, but they know. Same thing with us. We know for the most part. Doesn't mean we're always accurate. We know for the most part. Today's a little different. You look at someone like Lenny Kravitz and we say, oh, well, he's black. Well, he's black. Well, his mother's black. His father's white. Right? We may say, oh, well, Barack Obama, his father's Hamite. His mother's white. So it can be a little tricky today. But again, like I said, the curses never miss. You might. I might. The curses don't miss. We're going to keep going. Deuteronomy 28 and 37. That's where we look at the, where it's talking about the bywords, proverbs, all these atrocities that things like that follow you around, and all of a sudden you end up in human zoos. You end up in human zoos. You end up a specimen like Sarah Bartman.
The story of an African woman who was used as a circus animal by the Europeans. Bartman grew up on a colonial farm where she and her family worked as servants. By her teenage years, with still a lot to learn about life, Bartman married a Khoikhoi man who was a drummer. Husband was taken away from the face of earth by Dutch colonists. Soon after, she was sold into slavery to a trader named Peter Willem Cesar, who took her to Cape Town, where she became a domestic slave to his brother, Hendrik. This contract required her to travel with the Cesar brothers and Dunlop to England and Ireland, where she would work as a slave. She was sold 4 years later to Paris, where she was under the control of a wild animal exhibitor in a traveling circus. George Cuvier saw her and developed a scientific interest. His main idea of science was proving the superiority of the white people.
Sarah Bartman was a South African woman who was exhibited as a freak show attraction in Europe during the early 19th century. She was known for her large buttocks, which were objectified and exploited for entertainment purposes. Bartman was taken to Europe against her will and exhibited in various cities, where she was subjected to degrading treatment and sexual exploitation. After her death, her body was dissected and displayed in a museum, perpetuating the objectification and dehumanization she endured in life. Sarah Bartman's story highlights the historical exploitation and racism faced by black women, and her treatment serves as a reminder of the ongoing fight against racial and gender-based exploitation.
We're going to go to Psalm 83. Psalm 83. And we're going to read the first, 6 verses. Which reads, Keep not thy silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. That's us, we're the hidden ones. And they have said, Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. We're the only people who did not know who we are, who do not know our history. We have to go back and scramble. You talk to other people, they say unequivocally, I am Italian. Oh, I am Irish. I'm Scottish. I'm German. Russian, and then they can just go down, back. But us, oh no, we have to figure it out. We have to follow the breadcrumbs to figure out who we are, because we were indeed cut off from being a nation, and only too recently we start to reclaim our name again and say that we are Israel. Now of course we get a lot of backlash, a lot of pushback for that, and it's often being depicted as hate group, only because we're trying to reclaim our identity. And they're like, oh, well, we're just trying to steal one. No. Someone's already stole it. It was ours to begin with. But now, some of us don't represent our cause very well. I understand that. It's going to be very militant, loud, aggressive. I get it. They spew out things that may sound like hate speech, and I get it. I understand. Not necessarily a good representation, but I get it. But it doesn't mean that they're not Israel. Doesn't mean that they did not discover some truth, that they discovered that they were lied to. Doesn't mean that, because they have figured out that they were lied to, because we all were lied to. Even people on the other side of this issue, you were lied to as well. You have inherited lies as well. So that Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. That's why all the world, they don't like Israel. They don't like us. That's why we don't have a nation to call our own. Right? We don't have a nation to call our own. Verse 6, the tabernacle of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, right? All these other nations, all these have come up against Israel. They're confederate. They feel pretty much the same about us. And the whole purpose is to cut us off from being a nation, making sure we don't remember who we are. Making sure that. Now, of course, this is a part of the curse. Don't get me wrong, this is a part of the curse. This will comes with it. This will comes with that curse. You're not having an identity. You're not having your own language. You're not having your own land. You're not having your own identity. How can we not be a lost people? Tell me this. Who else fits this bill of being lost? We're cut off from being a nation. Let's go to Isaiah 42. Let's go to Isaiah 42. When you're there, we're going to start at verse 18. We're going to read 18 to 25. 18 to 25. Hear, ye deaf, and look, ye blind, that you may see. Who is blind but my servant? That's us. Or deaf as my messengers that I sent. Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as the Lord's servant, seeing many things, but thou observest not, opening the ears, but he heareth not. The Lord is well pleased for his righteousness' sake, and he will magnify the law and make it honorable. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. That's us. And they are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. For they are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith, restore. That is us, brothers and sisters, through and through. Want to look at the prison statistics? We make up like 13, well, under 15% of this country in the population. I'm talking about in the West in America. About 15% of the population and 50% of the crimes. I doubt that. You care to do the history of how the police force came about and their purpose? I won't get into that right now. 23. Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? I'm trying to say it right now. Who's going to listen? Who's going to understand? Who's going to get the information? Who gave Jacob for a spoil and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord, he who against whom we have sinned? Who did all this? Did not the Lord? I told you the curses, right? For those of you who made it this far, who think, oh, it's just hate speech, and who are we blaming? Right? We need to blame ourselves. Who did it? Who executed this judgment? The Most High, our God. We sinned against our God. So no, I don't hate you. The belt isn't hitting us on its own. The Most High swinging that belt. I don't hate white people, people of other nations. I don't hate you. I know where this punishment is coming from. You're an instrument. Been a blunt instrument, a deadly instrument, but you're an instrument nonetheless. And all this is going to happen until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. It's not done yet. That's why it's still happening. Now, we are in a lighter portion of this captivity, but we're still in captivity nonetheless. This is not our country now, is it? We're not on top now, are we? He said in 24 again, he said, who gave Jacob for a spoil in Israel to the robbers? You are the robbers. Did not the Lord, he against whom you have sinned, for they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law. Therefore he has poured upon him the fury of his anger and the strength of battle, and it has set him on fire round about. Yet he knew not, and it burned him, yet he laid it not to heart. Yet we don't know what has happened to us. Why are we going through this? Why all this sucks so bad? Why are we on the bottom of the societal totem pole? Why all the struggle? Why all the other nations hate us so much? Why can't we do better as a nation? Why do we have so much backbiting and infighting? They hate us, we hate each other. Why? Why can't we work together? Why can't we come together? The curses. It's our fault. We did this to ourselves by turning our back on our God. This is why. Now I want you to take a moment real quick, and then we're going to get into some of the other nations so we can start rounding this lesson out. But I want you to look at the other nations from Afro-Latino. Look at that. Look up Afro-Mexican. Look at people out of the Caribbean. I went over to the Dominican Republic, and if they didn't say anything, you would think they're us. Same thing. I've been to Mexico. I've been to the Dominican Republic. Look at the people in Brazil. Go on some tours and understand how they got there. And when you go and you look at some of them, look like us, and they gotten there through the slave trade. Israel, look at their history. Look at the black presence in some of these other countries. Look at some of the black presence of the history in Asian countries. Everywhere. There's still Israelites. There's still Israelites in Africa. There's still some in there. Limba, Bantu, these other tribes that still practice, they still go by the Bible, still go by Torah, still observe the Sabbath, still avoids pork. Now, as we do this, as you look at those images and we start to move forward, we're going to go back to Revelation and we'll look at some of the other people. So we're going to look at Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. Let's look at this. And this is what I know thy works in thy tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. People, there's some people who say that they are Jews and they are not. Couldn't be us, because we just recently woke up after centuries of not knowing who we are. After centuries. After that big boat ride to the Americas, plural, coming off going into a land among people whose language we do not know, who has a fierce countenance. When we stopped speaking our language, when we no longer had our Bible, we no longer had our scrolls, no longer had Torah and Tanakh, then it's repackaged, repurposed, and come back to us, the Bible, in another language and taught to us amiss. Centuries later. That's us. So we can't be these people. We can't be the Revelation 2:9 people, nor the Revelation 3:9. Let's go to 3:9. Behold, I will make them a synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, the feet of Israel, and to know that I have loved thee, that he has actually loved Israel. It's going to get better, guys. Hold on. It's okay. It's going to get better.
Khazar was a semi-nomadic ethnic that lives in the north part of the Caucasus Mountains on 6th century. They were one of the Turkic family which established the Khazaria Khaganate in 7th century due to the fall of the Western Gokturk. In the 8th century, many of the Khazars who practiced shamanism finally converted to Judaism. The Khazars have a good relationship with the Byzantine Empire, but having conflicts with the Arabian. Until the 9th century, the Pekineg ethnic invaded the Khazaria Empire. This makes the Khazarians turn weaker. The Khazaria Empire falls when the Kievan Rus ethnic, under Volodymyr the Great, which is also defeated the Volga Bulgars. After the fall, the Khazar finally disappeared from the history. However, is that really the Khazars disappeared after the fall? There were some theories that may help us to determine where are the Khazars now. Some theories stated that the Khazars were not disappeared. Instead, they're migrating to the west and forming the parts of the core of the Ashkenazi Jews population in Europe. According to an Israeli-born genetist, Aaron L. Hake, he found that the Ashkenazi Jews are the European Jews. They only have 3% similarity compared with ancient ancestors, which connected them with the other ethnics in the Middle East. This means that the DNA of the Ashkenazi Jews can be detected from an ancient Ashkenazi. Some Ashkenazis converted to Judaism before migrating to the Middle East for establishing a Jew country there. According to Aaron, an Asian DNA is also found in an Ashkenazi Jews. So it can be determined that an Asian DNA is actually the Khazar DNA, which converted to Judaism. Therefore, it was said that the Khazar Jews have been absorbed into the Ashkenazi Jews. This means that the Khazars were only disappeared from the history, but not for their people. Some of the Khazars were also assimilated with Turkic and Cumans. There were some figures which possibly the Khazars that have been absorbed into the Ashkenazi Jews, such as Karl Marx, Albert Einstein, Adolf Hitler, Mark Zuckerberg, and many more.
but do lie, which means they know the truth, but they're lying. They know they cannot prove who they are with the Bible. They cannot prove who they are with history. They cannot prove who they are with archaeology. They cannot use Egypt. They cannot prove that. And why is it that these people, they don't simply say, since you're the people and you're always the people and the curses never fell on you or whatever, then why don't you guys divide yourself up in tribes? Why don't you ever identify yourself as Israelite? Why don't you just simply say you're Jewish? Ish is kind of like, maybe it's because you're a convert, maybe? Because I find the Ashkenazis in the Bible. You got Sephardic, all these different flavors and variations. Why is that? Where did they come from? Who are these people? But one day it will change, and we will see. Isaiah 14, we're going to read the first 3 verses. And so let's look at something right here. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel. Brothers and sisters, don't despair. It will get better. And he will set them in their own land, and the stranger shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captive who captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in a day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherewith thou was made to serve. It's going to change. It's going to change. It will get better, but you and I have to endure until the end, and all debts will be settled. There'll be no more debate. When it's all said and done, we got a little bit more just to get us out of captivity. All this will change, brothers and sisters. Let's go to Deuteronomy. Just got a couple of places here to go. Go to Deuteronomy real quick. Deuteronomy 30. And then when we get to 30, I just want to read the first 5 verses so we can see the other side. There is an end to this. And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessings and the curse, which I have set before thee, and shall call them to mind among all the nations. So we were in another nation, and now it's coming to mind. We're remembering now, okay, whether the Lord thy God has driven thee, we're driven over to another nation, and shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul. That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity, okay? We're not going to be captivity anymore, and have compassion upon thee, and return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God has scattered thee. We have been scattered, and he's going to turn it around. If any of thy be driven out unto the outmost parts of the heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. We will grow. We will prosper in our own land. And just like in verse 4, he said, if any of thy be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. So we were literally scattered into other nations. I'm here. We're here, right? They're Central America, South America, and North America, as well as other countries. Some countries in Africa, some places in Europe, and some places in Asia. And yes, there are also people of color and some Israelites over in Australia as well. So we're everywhere. We're everywhere. So best believe when he said we're scattered everywhere, we're scattered everywhere. I don't care if it's Bangkok Challenge. There's probably a black dude sitting under a bowl of rice. Okay? We're everywhere. But he said no matter where you are, he's going to gather you. So he literally scattered us. He's going to literally gather us. Fear not. Let's go to Matthew 24. Start rounding this out. Matthew 24. Okay, Matthew 24, I'm just going to read 29 and 31. 29 says this. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. From one end of heaven to the other, from all over the world. And he's talking about the second coming. He literally scattered us. He will literally gather us. Let's go to our last spot in Isaiah. Last spot in Isaiah. And we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11. And go there. We're going to jump around a little bit in chapter 11. But first, when we go to chapter 11, I'm going to start over at verse 12. And he said, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, that's us, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. That is us. Drop down to verse 1. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. Talking about our Messiah. And verse 4, jump to verse 4. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth, and shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lip shall he slay the wicked. Right? So he's going to slay the wicked. But now let's drop down to 9. Okay, we'll read 9 up to 12. And they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to what? To recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the isles of the sea, from all the other nations. Wherever Israel is, he's going to gather them again. Now let's do 15 and 16 real quick. And it says, and the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod. He's going to dry that up so that Israel can sojourn over there. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day that he came up out of the land of Egypt. So brothers and sisters, we have the color and the curses. Who Israel is today. I presented for you. I put pictures and graphs and evidence on the screen. We went to the Bible. We went to extra biblical resources. We at least built a case that, at least beyond a shadow of a doubt. And if you don't know who it is, you know who it isn't. At the very least. But see, these things have to match up, brothers and sisters. They have to match up. Because if you're going to endeavor to understand the Bible, because I hear the all too familiar refrain, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the color. It's just about, But it mattered enough to lie about it. I don't understand that. Why? If it doesn't matter, then why change it? If it doesn't matter, then why lie to the people? Why hide this information from them? I've only read, I made nothing up. I just was reading. I just presented the evidence to the people, and I will let you decide. But if it doesn't matter, then why lie? Why deceive the people? If it doesn't matter, then why even debate and argue against it? Why not just accept or reject the information and move on? See, brothers and sisters, it actually does matter. Because salvation is of the Jews. Because the Bible is about the Most High God, Messiah, Israel, and Jerusalem. Has God cast away his people? Yah forbid. And if the prophecies are about his people, then shouldn't you and I know who his people are? I'm going to go ahead and close out now, brothers and sisters. I hope many of you have been edified. But before we get out of here, please allow me to invite you to like, share, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Oh, and by the way, please smash that notification bell because I don't want you to miss any of these lessons. And if you feel so inclined, please check the description box down below for the donation links, which would be either PayPal, Fountain of Israel, or CashApp. Now with that, don't forget the rest of these lessons that are coming up. We still have more to come. Now the others, they won't be quite as long, but they will certainly be informative. So until then, search the scriptures, improve all things. Shalom, Israel.